This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. The dog days of summer, man. It's hot, it's humid, and it's actually quiet. After the fever of free agency frenzy, there's got to be at least a moment for us to kind of like take a breath, right?
Time to break it
I think
down.
we're in that period right now where everybody is taking a moment, taking a breath, and then we'll, raise our eyebrows up and then say, "Oh crap, it's media day. Oh crap, it's it's OTAs again." So, it's but it's a good time, especially to kind of gather your bearings, especially with the blitz of everything that's been going on, previously the last few weeks. And as always, let me go ahead and roll at the red carpet to my right hand man, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC, my man, Mr. Warren Shaw, repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What's good, brother, man? How you doing?
Back up in the joint, brother. Taking my fresh off a little mini vacation myself, as the NBA world is all like everyone's, in Europe or in the Caribbean or whatever the case may be. Luckily, I live in a place that a lot of people come to vacation, but I went up the coast and it took me a couple of days back. But we're back here, man, and ready to rock with the baseline as always. Power-packed show, ready for folks to rock and roll with.
Absolutely, man. So this is also a good opportunity for us to kind of, navigate things a little bit differently. I know everybody is, salivating, waiting, impatiently to start talking about new players, new faces, and new places. Get ready for the previews already, pre-talking about, who's gonna hoist the trophy and everything like that. Settle down. There'll be plenty of time to do that, right? Like the NBA will not disappoint in giving us fodder for talk. Okay, so, but we wanted to take a little bit of a different approach, and this kind of goes the way of how our minds kind of work in this part of the offseason, right? Like, because there are players who are a part of this free agency frenzy that really didn't get a lot of press. They didn't get a lot of conversation of, but I think you, me, Shaw, and maybe even our listeners might think differently about whether or not, we want to make sure that these guys don't get overlooked, because I do think that them being in new destinations and new places may actually have an impact on whether or not the teams that they're going to be playing for and why they got them is going to put them in the best position possible for them to make that run, right? So we're going to highlight our buy and sell feature with guys who we know there needs to be some level of hoop redemption. And we're going to be on that buy and sell mode about, are we completely buying in? Are we all in on the fact that them being in this situation, this circumstance with this team is the right fit? Or are we selling out on the idea that even if they're going to be there, they're not really the ones, right? Like, it's going to take something else, and whatever it is that they're going to probably bring to the table might not be enough for whatever those expectations might be. And I know that there's a long list, but we're just highlighting guys that we feel like didn't get enough conversation or talk, but we thought that the move itself was signifying something for what these teams are trying to position themselves, prepare themselves to do. So we'll let you know what those guys are. And as always, we appreciate everybody for hopping on board with us this week. Be sure to get my man Shaw at Shaw Sports. I'm sorry, at the Warren Shaw. I keep forgetting that, man. Now that you're official and you put the in front of your name, it's just,
Yeah,
you're so Hollywood that, man, like I almost have to,
One day, I'm trying to put it into existence as I speak.
You let me know when I got clearance to then put the Game Face Lee, because I thought Game Face Lee was already good, but
you rocking and rolling always.
Anyway, but you can always get us at our show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline, and as always, the show is on www.baselinenba.com, so you can always catch not just this episode but also all of our episodes as well too. When you see us on YouTube, we say hello to you and yours. And you know that if you see the blue and white logo right down in the bottom middle of the screen, you know that we rocks with the 19 Media Group family. 19 Media Group, we run in these content streets. So be sure to go to www.19mediagroup.com to not only just check us out, but also check out the family of great content creators that are helping to spread the word on why 19 Media Group is the premier spot to cover sports, culture, entertainment, you name it. 19 Media Group has got it. As always, be sure to go and check out the family of great content creators. So, Shaw, let's get right into it, man. This is our buy or sell mode regarding, players that we feel like, listen, the move was made. They were part of the conversation, but they deserve a little bit of talk, right? And the whole idea is, do we buy or sell on some of these players? Because quite frankly, the reason why they didn't get talked about is the likelihood is they had a pretty disappointing season, or for whatever reason, where they were playing or who they were playing with, they just did not perform to the level that I think would have impacted them for why they were brought there to begin with. Now, that's not to say that these guys are trash or these, their season, their careers or anything like that. But we do think that there is an opportunity of hoops redemption, because now you start looking at what these guys are expected to come and do for these teams. And the idea is that if they're able to do it at a high level, most certainly they will bounce back and perform at the level we've always expected them to be. So I'll let you start it off, Shaw. Who are you starting with for our conversation of buy or sell hoops redemption?
So I'm actually going to go with somebody who's not in a position who's going to be all that impactful in terms of team winning, right? This team is resetting the table for what they want to do. And we talk about this every now and then. Sometimes a great move is understanding that you're not going to be great. And it's time to all right, let's try to develop some young talent, get as much talent as we can in here. Tank, air quote, so to speak, but try to get yourself in positions for great lottery picks. And I'm talking right now, I'm looking at the Washington Wizards, and I think they did a really good job over the course of this summer to reset their roster, right? And just say, bring in a bunch of young dudes. And one of the young guys who I think I'm really excited to see if he really is as good as people say he is, or he thinks he is Cam Whitmore. I think this is a prime opportunity for Cam Whitmore to truly, truly ball out now with the Washington Wizards. Young core, obviously Carrington is there. You got Sarr there as well. Even Corey Kispert to a lesser degree coming off the bench, whatever, right? They got was it Thomas from Texas. This Washington team is kind of loaded with young guys, and you just don't quite win everybody's going to be. But I'm looking for Whitmore to kind of go out here and be kind of like this alpha, you know what I mean? Because he's going to be a little bit of a veteran presence, if you will. I guess it's his third or fourth year in the NBA. But I think he's somebody who really knows he can score the basketball. And whether or not he can do that in a way that's not just kind of empty calories is something that we will ultimately want to see here. But Whitmore's primed to have a really breakout year in terms of his statistical performance. But can it translate to somebody into something that the Washington Wizards will want to kind of keep around, not just kind of a bridge to their next iteration, but is he a pseudo building piece that's hey, you know what? This is a nice complimentary guy who can get you a lot of points, can rebound a little bit as well too. I'm really excited for the year Cam Whitmore should have in Washington.
So I would be excited for him. I think my question to you, Shaw, is will the maturity catch up with the untapped potential, right? And I often say to myself, when I look at some of these guys who they have been highly touted, they've been highly recognized, maybe when they came in, they were a wild card project by their previous organizations. Somehow something has not synced in. And I'm not blaming the player. It could certainly be the situation, the circumstance. It could be the development system that they were involved in. Something just hasn't clicked with Cam Whitmore. And you get to a point, especially when a player who is now fully baked in, he's no longer a 1-year rookie or anything like that. This is someone who's baked in, already understanding the nuances of how he's going to have to make himself successful. I am often scared when I see situations like this for a guy like Cam Whitmore. I'm not liking him to a Jordan Poole, but what I'm saying is that Jordan Poole was someone where that opportunity was there for him because he played on a mature roster and positioned himself well to be a key player to help the Golden State Warriors win that championship. Cam Whitmore's never had that opportunity. Now he has an opportunity to go to an organization that's been mired in mediocrity and even less than that for quite some time. And whenever they try to bring in premier players or future players, it just never seems to click or resonate that this is an opportunity where it's not even just about your personal stats. You could literally be responsible for revitalizing a franchise, an organization, and the belief and the hope that they can actually be a sustainably good team. Something where it's more than just getting a long-term contract, but also becoming an attractive destination for free agents, for coaches who want to be involved in this and see that potential. Some of these guys just don't understand that. And to your point, Shaw, we've seen the glimpses of when Cam Whitmore, when he's on one, what he could really look like, right? Can he do that now, knowing that this is basically a open canvas, right? Like, he has an opportunity to be Picasso in a situation where everything around him is either mired in ugliness or is not attractive enough for people to actually buy into the idea that, this is a place where guys really should want to play, stand out, show out, and make something of it. And I think people get lost into the wins and losses aspect of it as well too. But what I'm just looking for is, if Cam Whitmore is that premier of a player, if he's that person that a lot of people believed in, if he was in the right situation, could have clearly been a number one kind of guy or whatever the case may be, what better way for you to be able to do that than in a place where nobody has any expectations for you to succeed? Nobody has any expectations that the Wizards are going to be a playoff or play-in bound team. But if you help improve, if you help elevate even the roster of guys that are around you, and you then stand out, you don't even have to be an all-star, but you've got to be in a position where you're having like an impact. I think that to me is what I'm looking for more than anything with Cam Whitmore.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a guy who can get you 20 easy, right? His per 36 or, gets him, I think, at 23, or I think 21, 23 his first year and 21 last year. Houston just took a leap that was in some ways unexpected, and they just didn't need him. And so I credit the Rockets for putting him in a position where he would I'll have an opportunity to get some run. Like, he should be competing for big time minutes there. And I think I said Thomas before, but obviously Trey Johnson, who they drafted. But along with Johnson, and whether or not they keep McCollum or not or whatever, like, there's going to be a lot of guys maybe trying to bite at the apple and take some shots. What's going to be the role delineation on this team? I'm not quite sure what that is just yet right now, as we're in August. But I'm interested to see, and whether Whitmore is a guy who gets 30 minutes a night, whether that is as a starter or coming off the bench. I think he's just going to have opportunity to get minutes in general. And now, as you alluded to, is he an empty calories guy, or is he somebody who can really help you for the short term and potentially the midterm and long-term future of the Washington Wizards? That remains to be seen. I think we'll know a lot after this year, whether or not the Wizards choose to pick up year 4 and 5, for him on that rookie contract, or whether or not they're like, all right, we've seen enough, kind of like they did with Jordan Poole in 2 years. Like, we're good on that. This is not quite the dude. But I'm rooting for Cam Whitmore. Obviously, he slipped in the draft a couple of years ago. He's got he's got a lot to prove. He's got a big chip on his shoulder. And I think he's somebody who will be able to have a really big season in Washington.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think there's definitely opportunity for him to have an awesome season, right? How and what that translates to, again, I think it's just going to be the big question as it pertains to the roster that he's playing around, that he'll be surrounded by, right? There's some potential really, really good players there. Will the chemistry be there, right? With Bub Carrington and, Sarr and those guys. Like, if they can figure out a way, if they could figure out a way, like, and listen, they could very much do like what Detroit did. You know what I mean? Like, there's an opportunity there. I'm not saying that Whitmore is anything like Cade Cunningham, but what I'm saying is Cade Cunningham put in that work because he understood the importance of being that draft lottery pick, being among one of the best players in that draft being selected. And he already understood the history of what's been going on with the Detroit Pistons. And I think that lent itself for him to be fast-tracked into why people believe so heavily into the turnaround for the Detroit Pistons. And so that's what I mean. Like, if this is an opportunity for Cam Whitmore to kind of show us, it doesn't have to be getting those 20 points easy. Like, we know that if you're getting the minutes, you're going to get the opportunities, you're going to get the shots. But if you're somebody who's really not within the flow of the potential of the guys that are around you, it meant that you never bought into that anyway. So you're just trying to get yours. And that's not going to help the Washington Wizards either.
Yeah. All right. Well, you give us your first guy here. Enough Cam Whitmore talk. We're rooting for a young fella. But who you got, CO? Who's your first guy in this line?
So the first person I want to talk about is, ironically enough, I was on the fence about bringing him up, but I do think that it's important that we do have this conversation about Lonzo Ball. And Lonzo Ball being a part of the Cleveland Cavaliers, I really don't know if people really understand it. Like, this is the Cleveland Cavaliers really, really, really rolling the dice here and pushing their chips all in on addressing the depth that they didn't have access to with a legitimate point guard, and also acknowledging that this isn't about, anything regarding Darius Garland. I think if anything, it's about recognizing that they need Darius Garland in whatever capacity that he's available to without stretching him thin, especially through his young career, and basically enabling the Cleveland Cavaliers to still have depth in their second unit, and having a guy like Lonzo Ball on that roster. But to me, the thing that I think really stands out more than anything when I think about Lonzo Ball, when I think about the Ball brothers, Lonzo Ball to me reflected the most successful of the brothers, arguably, right? Like where he went, he actually did have an impact when he was healthy. And it's just terrible that the injuries have just completely ravaged what we could have potentially seen in his career. But this is an opportunity where maybe the organization, maybe being under the Cleveland Cavaliers, they are going to properly utilize him and put him in the best position possible where we see the maximum potential without stretching him to the point where he's not going to be available when it really matters the most. When we really wanted to have this opportunity of seeing the greatness that's within Lonzo Ball as to what he can do. And this is a great situation for him. I do think and believe that there's a hoop redemption storyline to this, because we've been doing this all throughout the Balls brothers' careers, right? Like we've been giving them chance after chance after chance after chance. There comes a point where we stop with all of this, right? It's no longer the father. It's no longer about LaMelo. It's no longer about LiAngelo. This is about Lonzo. And if Lonzo recognizes that he has a window where he can be successful, and it's with a team that has been in the playoffs the last 3 years, he has to be one of the reasons why they're now taking that next step, which is ultimately getting to the Eastern Conference Finals and ultimately getting to the NBA Finals. He has to be an important reason for them to do that. And this is what I'm looking forward to when I speak about Lonzo Ball, because through the years, we've been deprived of the opportunity of what he can actually bring to the table for the teams that he's played for.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to stay healthy. That's first and foremost. But I think the acquisition of bringing him in behind Garland, who himself was banged up, is going to be, I think, hopefully a nice 1-2 combo that they can continue to get play creation when Garland is off the floor. Because then when Garland's out, it kind of defaults to Donovan Mitchell, who obviously can do it, but is still better served playing off the ball. And again, as a secondary creator, not having to be a primary for any kind of like a 6-minute stretch just because Garland is off the floor. So that allows Lonzo to be able to do that. And if you believe his 3-point shooting has improved in the way that we saw it kind of last year, and then obviously before he got injured for those last couple of years, then that's somebody as well too. If Donovan is driving, he's kicking out, or if Mobley's getting double teamed, same thing. Somebody who can hit an open three, especially if it's on the wings or in the corners. I don't know that he's going to have any kind of blow by ability right now, and if he's going to be able to raise the floor for them on the fast break side, but he's still bringing a steady force. He's going to make smart decisions for them, and that's what this Cavaliers team needs. And I think when you talk about the depth, that really is something that he's being brought here to do in a real way. They lost Ty Jerome, obviously, or they choose not to, re-sign him in that capacity. So he's not going to be able to provide the scoring punch, I would imagine, that Jerome did, I think, at times. But again, that play creation and then a little bit of defense as well, too, should make a lot of sense for this Cavaliers team that definitely needs something else on that bench when it comes to the backcourt spot, right? Like they're pretty rocking and rolling when it comes to the front court, but that backcourt was a little iffy if Garland and Donovan weren't always at their best.
Yeah. So when it comes to Lonzo, I'll just make this point real quick. Last year he really he played about 35 games, right? Obviously injury ridden, only averaged about 22 minutes, right? Only averaging around 3.5 assists per game. And I was just curious, from your perspective, Shaw, when you look at the statistics, and the skill set of a guy like Lonzo Ball, I think that Lonzo Ball actually will help out guys like Sam Merrill and guys like DeAndre Hunter. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't necessarily have to be scoring the basketball, so we don't have to worry about that part of it. But his ability to distribute, his ability to hit guys, in spots, in spaces, and things of that nature, I think is so critical. And to me, it's what continues to give Kenny Atkinson options, and the ability to plug and play and mess with the roster a little bit more, rather than only relying on certain guys when they're streaking. You know what I mean? And that isn't necessarily the case. He knows his best players are going to be the ones that are going to have to step up to that next level, but he definitely needs the floor generals to get those guys those opportunities in those spots. To me, what do you think should be the one thing that you want to see as on an uptick that gives you the confidence for Lonzo Ball to have that kind of season that you alluded to?
I mean, I think it's just it begins to start with me with the health. Is he on the floor? Is he available?
Right. So the number of games played.
Right. I think he'll mesh in fine. I mean, I didn't realize that, Larry Nance was back on this roster as well. But I think, somebody who will be able to throw the lob, I think, to Allen, Mobley, and maybe even Nance in whatever minutes he's able to get. And then also, play create and play off, off the pick and roll, and hit guys on the corners and in the wings, when he is trying to drive to the basket. Don't know what his floater's looking like these days, but that's a shot that I think he'll have to be able to hit offensively, and just whether or not he's able to impact them defensively in a way that's not negative. Like I said before, I really like the overall addition. Ironically, I don't want to get too down the road of, kind of like it's kind of your lane, the conspiracy theories, but our guy Gerald on Rick Mahorn, they were talking on Sirius XM, I think when it announced early in the summer, they're like, this could be maybe the Cleveland Cavaliers are not all that excited about keeping Garland, and could Lonzo Ball be the replacement? Clearly Garland's a better player than Lonzo Ball, right? But it's like they were saying, could Garland then be the conduit to a trade that gets him even more depth and letting Lonzo kind of be maybe the lead guard in that situation? I don't know. It seemed a little far fetched at the time. Our guy Gerald and Rick, they do some real fun stuff, I think, on the weekends there. But it was an interesting take at the time. I think Gerald specifically was saying, and while I wasn't necessarily buying that, I could see where he could come up with the narrative, so to speak. But I think they made this move in essence to have both of them, especially for this year, to see if they can make a deeper run in the Eastern Conference finally.
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren, Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, Shaw and I will dig into another set of players who we're on the buy or sell bandwagon of hoops redemption. Don't want to miss it here on The Baseline. We are back. Callie, Warren, Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast, and we're doing our buy or sell edition of hoops redemption. Guys that didn't get a lot of press, pub talk, or conversation, but we do think that the moves made might speak a little bit more about whether or not this is an opportunity for these guys to either be, applauded or lauded when it's all said and done with what they should be contributing for their new teams. All right, Shaw. So let me go ahead and I'll start with my number 2 in this conversation. And this to me is one that definitely flew under the radar. But I'm going to speak to it because I was a little surprised at how off a season it was for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And, when I think about, who he is as a player, what he's meant over the last 3-4 years, it's been kind of interesting to me because teams that are bringing in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope know what they're bringing him for. And he knows what he's being brought in for. And since winning the championship for the Denver Nuggets, okay, it just feels like something is a little bit off, right? He's not as defensively sound as he was coming off that season to help them win that championship. His three-point shooting has not been, as consistent. It's actually been on a downtick, right? And even last year with what happened with the Orlando Magic, and I was watching those playoff games, he just seemed to be doing a lot more talking than actually helping the Orlando Magic basically lean a lot more into what made them who they were. And I'm not saying it was his fault. What I'm just saying is that it just seemed a little out of character with what you come to know when you think about KCP. And so to me, him now being with the Memphis Grizzlies, I find it interesting because I think where a lot of people are on this perception that the Memphis Grizzlies are selling out because they got rid of Desmond Bane, I do believe that they still believe that they have an inside chance, like any of the teams in the Western Conference, to make a play. And you only bring a veteran guy on here if you truly believe that he can work with Ja Morant. He can work with Jaren Jackson Jr. And if nothing else, elevate them to play even better defensively without compromising what you were getting from the play of Desmond Bane. Now, he's not your replacement, but what I'm saying is that you obviously are bringing him to the table knowing that he can help bring contribution to what the Memphis Grizzlies could potentially do, especially as a starting 3-and-D kind of guard on that roster.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure that he will start. I think, where we're at with KCP at this stage of his career, it's the quintessential solid veteran guy who doesn't really hurt you too much. His expectations in Orlando were too lofty for his proverbial station. They just didn't, and he didn't have the same juice there because he also didn't have a lot of play creation, right? You come off, playing with Joker, and then, while Banchero and Wagner are cool and all, that's not the same level of play creation, even with Jalen Suggs kind of.
That ball don't move the same way.
It's just not, it's just not there. We're not talking about the same situation. So he was just slightly miscast while nobody said the signing was bad. Everybody thought there was going to be more. And I think he himself expected to be maybe more productive in that situation. Now you go into Memphis. Well, sure, he'll have an opportunity to start, but I don't know that he will, especially if Jalen Wells is as good as we think he is, right? And now they also brought the aforementioned in our previous segment, Ty Jerome, into this situation. So KCP is going to have to earn those minutes, but the one thing is that he's going to be a good pro, and that's something I think you definitely want to make sure you have alongside, Ja Morant. Ja Morant had that lost year with Derrick Rose and Marcus Smart where nothing really seemed to mesh in that, but he continued to have that great presence. But we're here to talk about the actual basketball. And I'm maybe not as convinced as, I'm not saying that you are, but I'm not sure he has as much juice left to be as impactful. While I think Ja can get him some good shots as well, too, even Jaren Jackson to a lesser degree, although we know Jaren Jackson doesn't really play in the post all that much. KCP, I think, is going to be productive, but not, and I think in a really difference-making way.
Yeah, I think where my concern comes into play is you're not going to be able to change what KCP has evolved into in being the quality player that he has been, right? He is someone that operates better when the ball comes to him rather than him actually establishing anything from a guard level perspective. And that's probably the reason. That's definitely a reason why you got Ty Jerome, right? Like, you have that kind of dynamic person who can get the ball. He can, create on his own. And, when Ja Morant is off the floor, Ty Jerome in many respects, I think, can figure out a way to get the ball to other playmakers as well, too. I think, to your point, where I'm at when it comes to what KCP can bring to the table is there has to be accountability for when the Memphis Grizzlies are not sound defensively, right? And I go back to what I was saying a little bit earlier, that what was so out of character last year when it came to KCP is he wasn't even solid defensively as much as I think he could have been. Now, I don't know if it's because of the fact that the way that Jamal Mosley had the team set up and how they play defense maybe made him look slower or made him look like he just wasn't, meshing or fitting in. And I'm not saying that he's still a quality defender. And I think that it's imperative that what he can bring to the table for the Memphis Grizzlies as far as defending goes is gonna be catamount, because if you're gonna thrust Jalen Wells into that situation, you're telling me that you believe that he's gonna be able to hold his own against the best two guards in the Western Conference, which is still very guard heavy. And I don't know if I buy that completely, which is why having a Kentavious Caldwell-Pope allows a little bit more flexibility, especially when you recognize that Wells may get into foul trouble or Morant get into foul trouble and you need a heady, savvy defender like KCP. That part of it, I want to make sure is still intact. Or else, what was the point of you bringing him onto this roster if you didn't think that he was capable of still holding his own against some of the better guards that are still in the Western Conference?
Right. I mean, and I think, it's interesting when you bring it up that way, because I think, even looking, most projected lineups have him as a starting 2 and Jalen Wells as a starting 3, right? So maybe it's kind of a non-issue. Jaren Jackson at the 4 and Zach Edey at the 5, right? So it should be KCP's starting job to lose. But I think where I'm going to shift the conversation some is, are we thinking about what he needs to be able to do offensively in that Memphis system? Or is it more from, can he be a defensive leader, right? And it's not always the blocks and the steals or whatever, but it's just the stops, or filtering guys into help with Jaren Jackson. And now, Zach Edey is a gargantuan, at the rim. So Is he going to be able to help them from that lens and then mature the Memphis defense in a way that we've always kind of expected them to be, like this really great defensive team? And they showed some signs even in the last couple of years. But they fell a little bit. They slipped a little bit last year when they changed their entirety of their offense and hired all those new coaches. And we want to see if they can get that defensive identity back. That's why I think KCP probably still can be impactful. But if you're looking for him to be, a 40% three-point shooter or whatever the case to be and giving you 15 to 16 a game, I don't know that KCP is still there for Memphis, but that doesn't mean he can't be helpful, especially defensively.
Yeah. So, are we buying or selling?
Well, you're buying. I'm a little bit more dubious, so I'm going to sell on the KCP situation. I'd be interested to see what he does.
How are you taking my credit card and
Listen, you know what? It's years of podcasting with you, and I understand. Like, you're a KCP guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's a lot of reasons to be a KCP guy. He's had a fabulous overall career, and he's helped in almost every.
He has a good acronym. I like KCP.
Well there's that too.
That works for it. Yeah. All right, Shaw. Who do you have?
I'm going to jump to somebody who is. For continuity's sake, let me go with a current Nugget, as you're talking about a former Nugget. And this is not somebody a lot of people are going to give two wiggies about. Shout out to Helter Skelter. But Jonas Valančiūnas, while I know he was flirting with the opportunity to kind of go overseas after he got traded from Sacramento, I know he has a great opportunity to play winning basketball and really be on a big stage with the Denver Nuggets playing behind Jokic. I don't know how many minutes they'll actually get together. That remains to potentially be seen if there'll be some kind of like wonky lineups where they play those two bigs. But Valančiūnas is somebody who plays at least 70, 72 games each year, generally very healthy and very productive, especially from the rebounding side. I'm not going to call a bunch of plays for him, but he can post up. He can hit that kind of like little turnaround or whatever the case would be. He's got a decent mid-range shot. Not a great defender when it comes to blocking shots, whatever, but he's a very, very big body. And I think as much help as you can give, Nikola Jokic at this stage here, where you don't want to continue to just wear him down 40, 45 minutes a night, especially in the regular season, Valančiūnas can soak up a lot of those minutes and be very, very, very impactful for them, especially when it comes to getting some post-production in a way that they haven't had when Joker goes on the bench. So I'm looking for Valančiūnas to play winning basketball this season.
One of the things that I really appreciate about the Nuggets doing this is they knew getting Jonas Valančiūnas was not to get them a Jokic-like, right? Like, if they really wanted to get a Jokic-like, they'd try to get, Jusuf Nurkic. That ain't going to work, right? There weren't that many people out there that you're going to be able to get to do and replicate what Nikola Jokic brings to the table as far as the game of basketball. But you can get players who, if they play next to a guy like Jokic or they play for a guy like Jokic, you're going to get the maximum of what their abilities has allowed them to do. And with Valančiūnas, and what I appreciate mostly than anything about him is he's grown to be the bully on the block, and he's embraced that. He's accepted that. And sometimes that's exactly what the Denver Nuggets needed, man. Sometimes they needed another level of toughness. They needed another level of bravado in them that is not filtered through what Jokic gives you just because of his statistics and, how he loves to move the basketball. Valančiūnas can move the basketball. He just isn't going to shoot the ball like Jokic, right? But Valančiūnas can get the ball to guys. He can definitely set those picks that you always expected from Jokic. If nothing else, he actually gives another dimension to what we've been starving from Jamal Murray and how he is, as a guard, supposed to help accentuate the offenses in different ways. And part of that is because there's too much dependency on what Jokic has been doing and the ball going through Jokic so much. So I think having a guy like Valančiūnas, while again, to your point, is going to eat up a lot of Jokic minutes, what I also am appreciating about is this is now going to put that challenge back on the Nuggets to say, we have these different dynamic players. They all don't have to be like Jokic. Let's start maximizing what these guys can actually bring to the table so it can really help diversify what the Denver Nuggets have been lacking over the last couple of years. It's basically made them a one-trick pony because they know that the moment Jokic comes off the floor, the Nuggets have no imagination in offense. They have no imagination in shot selection. They have no imagination. It's like they're completely lost. But a guy like Valančiūnas, who spent years playing for so many different teams and has made his way into getting people to understand, I can give you what you need. You just need to tell me. He, to me, can be a very solid player, to your point, Shaw, in helping to diversify the Denver Nuggets, being the perennial powerhouse team again, as always.
Yeah, and again, in an age where we want everybody to shoot and big men to shoot or whatever, he's not doing that, right? Valančiūnas is a 2-point bucket getter. Like that's what it's going to be. Like 89 or 91% of his shots are within 16 feet and below. Like he is not out here just jacking up. And I don't know if the Nuggets will, ask him to, try to stretch and do the corner three or something like that, but that's just not been his game. But it's somebody who's going to be able to definitely get you some baskets, in the post. And Jokic, again, I think there will be some times where they can play together. But I think more importantly, it's just so that Jokic's minutes can come down some, in the regular season. And while Joker's never really struggled for efficiency, so to speak, we might even see some more efficiency as a result of not having to play, those exhaustive minutes that we've seen, in years past. As the Nuggets have really retooled their roster. Obviously, they got Bruce Brown back as well, too. But I think Valančiūnas in this light, I think he's going to be happy that he didn't go to Europe, right? And having a chance to really compete at the highest level for, I think, really one of the first times in his NBA career, right? Like he was in Memphis, he was in Toronto, he was in New Orleans, and none of those situations I think were really contenders. The Nuggets are legitimate contenders, and I think we may see Valančiūnas as some of his best ball coming in a backup role.
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie, Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Coming up, we're doing part 3 of our buy or sell Hooper's Redemption. You don't want to miss it, man. We got 2 more interesting names to throw out there, and so you want to figure out whether or not we buying or selling on them. You gotta hang with us, man. You're catching us here. Callie, Warren Shaw. Don't go anywhere. We're back, Callie, Warren Shaw, Baseline NBA podcast, and we're doing our buy or sell Hoops Redemption edition. So we went through 4, right? Got another 2 to do, Shaw. So who do you have on your list?
And so this is maybe not going in the method of the exercise, because this is not somebody who I think is poised to have a great season, but I'm hoping I'm wrong because I like him as an individual. But there's a lot of controversy about the move, and that's actually Myles Turner going to the Milwaukee Bucks. A lot was talked about Dame Lillard being stretched and waived as a result of acquiring Myles Turner, but not a lot of conversation was talked about Myles Turner's actual fit with Milwaukee in that. Mm-hmm. While Giannis is clearly a better basketball player and a Hall of Fame player, that Tyrese Halliburton is not at the stage of, I think, at this currently. I think Myles is going to find life very, very different on this Milwaukee team than he did the last couple of years playing a light song Halliburton. Giannis is a different type of creator than Halliburton is. And like he gets his baskets, very, very differently. He creates his assists very, very differently. Turner is going to have to be an effective knockdown jump shooter, in this Bucks offense that I don't know that he's quite capable of. While we've seen stretches where he's been hot, and we know the defense will be there, I'm just not sure about the fit offensively with this Bucks team. And it will start to come up when you talk about, well, we're basically essentially paying whatever it is, like $52 million to have for the rights of Myles Turner, because we're not paying Dame, but we're still paying, the waiving part of that salary and the contract that Turner essentially signed. That's going to make Turner like this $48 million player that, quite frankly, I don't know if physically he can live up to that. However, he is going to do everything in his power. I know Doc will do everything in his power as well, too, to put him in positions to be successful. But you have to also wonder about the play creation, the table setting of a Kevin Porter Jr. is kind of like the lead point guard there, Cole Anthony as the backup guy there. We know Giannis is really kind of the de facto point guard, but that really puts Myles Turner in a kind of a compromising situation where his jump shot needs to be almost knocked down for this contract, air quote, contract, or the money that's going to be paid out for the rights to him to actually be worth it. So I'm a little worried for Myles in that regard, but he's an amazing individual. He's just got a lot on his plate this upcoming season.
Listen, this is a very unusual circumstance, and I think the added pressure of him signing with arguably a rival, right? Yeah. To me, I think kind of speaks, more to what is taking place, right? Obviously, in his mind, he doesn't see things in that light, right? Like he's in that maybe that part of that generation where that won't have any kind of impact whatsoever about what it is that he wants to contribute. He could have already had maybe one foot out the door, recognizing, hey, I only have so many years left for me to give the best of what I can give. And at the same time, I only have so many opportunities or teams on the table that still have an outside or inside chance to make a run for a chip, right? So to your point, it's all kind of interesting, when we talk about a guy like Myles Turner, no question. And, we've had our conversations. We've even had Myles Turner on our show quite some time ago, right? Like he, to me, kind of gives me the flashes of what I would, would love to have seen from most of our bigs now in the current, NBA. And he's had to evolve in a way that's allowed him to be sustainable in the style of his play, especially playing for the Indiana Pacers. So now he's going to have to pivot and do that for the Milwaukee Bucks and do that next to arguably one of the greatest one of the great power forwards that's going to ever play this game of basketball.
Yep.
So, in a way, he was a part that person would have been his rival. That's the person where if he was as generational as a Giannis was, we would be talking about these matchups between him and the Milwaukee Bucks when he was playing as a Pacer. But it never evolved in that kind of way. It never happened that kind of way. I'm wondering how that influence is going to have for Myles Turner in this iteration, because that's what I was hoping for, right? I was hoping that he would have been that person that's elevated, saying, among the bigs, we are the behemoths, right? We are the what do they call it? It's Godzilla versus King Kong, right? King of the monsters. They arguably could have been the king of the monsters in the Eastern Conference. And now what he's bringing to the table is to help supplement elevating the Milwaukee Bucks back to that level of conversation where we're buying into them being legit contenders, right? And it not just being legit contenders solely on what Giannis does, but it's clearly going to have to be on what Myles Turner contributes for the Milwaukee Bucks. And that's just a different conversation and a different dynamic altogether.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because you look at them on paper, and Myles and Brook are very similar in terms of like their points per game, even in some ways the way they play, both really good rim defenders, always in the leaders, if you will, in terms of blocks. They both shoot about 5 to 6 threes a game, shoot about 35, well, somewhere between 35 and 40%. But their offensive systems have been very, very different. So while the statistical production is very, very close in terms of comparison, and that's where I think Milwaukee maybe got a little intoxicated. It's like, oh, we got our Brook Lopez replacement, younger version, et cetera, et cetera.
I think they're trying to do this again. I think they're, when Brook Lopez came to the Milwaukee Bucks and played next to Giannis, that was a resurgence of Brook Lopez and his career and the numbers that he put up defensively. First it started more offensively, but when they won the championship, it was the combination of the numbers that he provided both offensively and defensively. And that just continued a couple of years more until he now has, gone to the Los Angeles Clippers. I almost feel like the Milwaukee Bucks are just like, let's rerun this project one more time. Yeah. This is how we created Brook Lopez. And maybe that is something about Giannis that, we saw this with Bobby Portis as well, too, which is why he legitimately became a great backup as well. There's something about playing next to Giannis, maybe in some regards, that might actually accentuate what's been hidden under the crevices of Myles Turner's greatness. Maybe that's what will happen over the next couple of years. And, maybe we're having this conversation about the Milwaukee Bucks being legitimate contenders again because of what he's now going to be able to do next to Giannis than what he was doing all by himself.
Yeah, well, we'll absolutely see. I mean, Bobby Portis is there as well too. I mean, it's a different cast of characters there, and different coaching and different offensive set. So how Myles will integrate into this, we just don't know. Again, I thought it was worth bringing up because when you look at the numbers, very comparable. Turner's younger, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't know if it's going to be the same thing that that the Bucks are hoping for. And I know Myles was anxious to get the bag, and kudos to him for getting it. But will the production be there in the way that the Bucks need it to be, where he can have a season worth leaving the Indiana Pacers for?
Absolutely. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Still, Shaw, I want to blame you because I had my third all lined up, ready to go. And then you hit me with the MPJ card. And now, and listen, any strays that
put him on the list. I didn't hit you with anything.
I gave an extensive list. I gave an extensive list of a ton of people. And then we have this conversation off the air, and then you hit me with the, it is an interesting topic to have. So any strays, any collateral damage, you got to own this one, bro.
You got it. I'm with you.
Hey, Anthony Simons is lucky. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so my final buy or sell is going to be, Michael Porter Jr. Now, listen, everybody who's heard me seems to think I got a grudge with this kid. I don't. I really don't. I actually, when we first started talking about Michael Porter Jr., I've said totally like this guy. He's his untapped potential. He is a diamond in the rough. The Denver Nuggets may have struck gold with this kid. And listen, but if you really look at it holistically, he is definitely part of that team that won the championship. He was directly responsible for elevating the ability for the Denver Nuggets to shoot the basketball reasonably well, right? But where I think things fell short, and I don't know if it's just the style, the system, the coach, whatever it is, you could clearly tell over the last couple of years that Michael Porter Jr. needed a different change of play, like pace. He needed different scenery. He needed to be in a different circumstance and situation, right? Now, you look at his numbers, statistically, legitimate numbers, man. Average 33 minutes per game, almost 19 points per game, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, shot 50% from the floor, 39.5% for 3, which is only 0.5% from what he basically, gives you, I'm sorry. He's just 0.4% from what he gives you in his career from shooting the 3. So what do we make of him now going to the Brooklyn Nets? Well, if Michael Porter Jr. thought that him going to the Denver Nuggets was as a key piece to elevating the Nuggets, winning them a championship and things of that nature, and then you see the emergence of a guy like Jokic who's become a 3-time MVP, if Michael Porter Jr. really believes in his skill set, what better way for you to come out and, quiet the naysayers, shut people down, than by going out there to Brooklyn and ultimately balling out and giving Jody Fernandez and company a reason for them to be like, I like where we're going with this. I like the direction of what we can potentially get from a guy like Michael Porter Jr. with the roster that we have. He can clearly be a standout kind of guy. So that being said, does he have the passion to want to do that? Does he have the desire to want to do that? Because I'm going to tell you this right now, Shaw, you don't get too many circumstances like what he's got right now, where the bank is open. The bank is literally open. The Nets are playing with house money, right? So there's really no reason why he can't go ball out. His numbers can still have an impact. They're not 0 calories. He can have an impact if he really, really wants to.
Well, as we record, he is the lone adult in the room when it comes to offensive production. There's literally nobody on this roster right now that I would trust us for the basketball on a regular basis. There's rumors Cam Thomas might eventually come back because he's not finding what he likes on the open market. So if Cam comes back, then great. Well, you have two guys who, in essence, are could be potential chuckers. That said, Michael Porter, his counting stats are good, right? 40% 3-point shooter for his career. 7+ rebounds a game, for his career. Like, this is a guy who can play basketball, but he's had the lap of luxury playing alongside, Nikola Jokic for a very long time. Now what happens when you are the guy that defenses key in on every single night? There's nowhere for you to hide, so to speak. Defenses are going to like, this is the only guy I got, so let's stop him. They're not worried about Terrence Mann, going off, or Noah Clowney, or like, it's just like, this is not disrespect to the Brooklyn roster. The roster is very intent on trying to tank and get better draft picks. So now Michael Porter Jr. becomes the lead guy. And yeah, he could have a season where he gets 25 a game or whatever the case would be, but what will the efficiency look like? Will he still be able to shoot 50% from the floor and 40% from three, as he's just going to get touch upon touch upon touch? I don't know. Is he somebody who will be able to raise the ceiling of some of the other guys around him? That will be something I will really be interested to watch. I want to see it. I mean, it can happen when you're like kind of like the lead guy, right? There's a difference. Like there you can see the fork in the road in an offensive set almost like every play. It's like, all right, is this the best shot, or is this the best shot because it's me, right? Do I kick it to Whitehead or whoever the case may be on the floor with him? I don't know if he has that kind of decision making yet.
Do you know when that will happen, Shaw? When the Brooklyn Nets are playing on primetime games. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that to me is when I think those questions would be answered for me about that level of elevation, right? Because the Brooklyn Nets have been starving for that. They try to get that out of Mikal Bridges. They try to get that out of Cam Johnson, right? And so these are good, solid players, but these are good, solid players within a cast, and what they bring to the team collectively can help stand out. I think Michael Porter Jr. has always been the kind of guy where he wants to stand out. He wants to stand out on the bright lights. He definitely was not going to do that in the shadows of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. And his style of basketball, while within the flow, it's kind of like what Popovich did with Kawhi Leonard. You know what I'm saying? Like Malone did to Porter what Popovich kind of did to Kawhi Leonard. And when Kawhi Leonard had his moment, his opportunity, he snatched that decision out of the Spurs and Popovich's, pocket, so to speak. You don't have to worry about that for Michael Porter Jr. because Jody Fernandez can only depend on what Michael Porter Jr. ultimately, even if Cam Thomas comes back, that doesn't matter. What matters to me is what version of Michael Porter Jr. during those primetime games, when you play the Boston Celtics, when you play against the New York Knicks, when you play against, or when you're playing in the Emirates Cup tournament, right? When you're given an opportunity for you to put on a performance, to put on a show, will you be able to do that? Because if you've ever asked me, Shaw, the thing that has always bothered me about the upside and the potential of Michael Porter Jr. is that style that he plays, where he could just chuck the living daylights out of it, was a detriment to the Denver Nuggets when that wasn't what was needed. But in this situation, if he's going to do all that chucking and he's making shots, that's going to put him on a different platform because he's in a market that's going to love that, that's going to embrace that. You know what I'm saying? Because no one's going to tell him differently. There's nothing that's going to counter that aspect of it. So it'll be interesting to see if he's going to be that kind of person on the bright lights and it succeed. Because if not, he's just going to be another player using the Brooklyn Nets as a gateway for us to recognize he's a good shooter, he's a quality player, but he needs to be in a system where those type of things mask and don't necessarily stand out to be a detriment to him.
Well, it's going to be a really unique year for him and the opportunities that are presented to that. I don't know if Brooklyn is looking to keep him around or if they would look to try to deal him. He does obviously have a hefty salary attached to him. But at the same time, again, they have no other guy who can score, like legitimately, that you're even consistently concerned about. So unless they bring Thomas back, this is Michael Porter's show to kind of run, and let's see what he's able to do with it, in this, whatever it is, season, half a season, whatever it ultimately ends up being in Brooklyn.
The one thing that he has going for him, Shaw, he played 77 games last year. So he was healthy for the year, which I think is a good thing. I'm hoping that even for that the Brooklyn Nets don't overuse him, right? Like they solely dependent on him. 33 minutes, I think, is decent. I think that if he's playing and he is your number one guy, 33 minutes is really kind of pushing it for a guy like Porter. So it'll be interesting to see that style, that version, that usage of Porter, he can sustain that this year than what was actually given to him, what he did for the Denver Nuggets last year.
Yeah, I don't think his minutes will go up too much, maybe a minute or two. Well, he played like 33, 34 last year. Maybe he's at 34, 35. I think you alluded to, like, it's a usage. He took 13.6 shots. He's been averaging between 11 and 13 and a half shots for the last 4 years. Like, kind of like after that second year, and he was just like, oh, Jokic is that dude. He's kind of fallen back, but you can always probably like feel it kind of bubbling under the surface. Like, man, this guy wasn't here. You know what I mean? But he knew he could not fight that. So I give him a lot of credit for playing the role that he needed to play in Denver, especially after he got the contract. I think that was part of it probably too. They paid him when they didn't really need to, kind of overpaid him when they didn't need to. But he's played a significant role and played a massive role in them, winning an NBA championship a few seasons ago. But now it's kind of make or break. So in that 33, 34 minutes, do his shots go up to 18 to 20? I would say probably yes. And let's see what ends up happening, in that with those extra shot attempts and that usage that will be coming.
Wait, Shaw, you're not hedging your bets on that one?
Not even a little bit. It was an over under. Definitely taking the over.
Somebody get this man the black card. My man wants to go broke on that one.
I ain't mad at it though. I mean, if you're looking around, and again, I feel like I'm throwing shade, but in terms of like the experience, in terms of being like scorers in the NBA, there's nobody else on that roster that has that. Like the next most accomplished guy, I guess, is Terrence Mann. Cool. Like, let's see.
Yeah. I mean, listen, there's no question he's going to be averaging somewhere around 24, points, 25 points per game. Easy. But again, it'll be interesting when the bright lights, the big market, games, when they take place, is that person, that guy, Michael Porter Jr. going to be ready to go, ready to, show up and show out. And I think that is what I'm going to be most interested in seeing. Because listen, man, you play a few years on a very, it's kind of like what we're talking about right now with Klay Thompson, right? Like there has to be a happy medium, because even you as a player, when you're a certain, you reach certain milestones, certain parts of your career, you also have to recognize, even when a team pays money, a ton of money to bring you on, it isn't always just necessarily for what it was that you were doing, which made you so successful for the previous team. It's also about what you could potentially do for the rest of the team. And so to me, I just think it's interesting in what way will Michael Porter Jr., kind of lend himself to this Brooklyn Nets team and lend himself to his career, arguably, right, moving forward. Because I think this is what always has been the elephant in the room, of what needed to be addressed and answered. Does he thrive? Can he thrive on his own? Or was it that he just never realized how grateful he should have been playing next to, Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, and really elevating himself in a way where what he was doing was for the better of the team and helping the team win more than what they were able, to do. Not to take away from what they have done, but I just think that he's always been the X factor guy that never really lived up to what I think he could have potentially have been. And now is the opportunity for him to actually prove that part of it.
Yeah. Kudos to Michael Porter Jr. Let's see what Myles Turner can also do as well. Two guys maybe were a little bit doubtful about how they'll perform in their new situations, but all the opportunity in the world for them to be successful. We're not rooting against anybody here on the baseline.
Yeah, I want to see these guys succeed, man.
Be concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to see these guys succeed. Absolutely, man. Like from the days that we remember when they first came, when they walked onto that podium, shook hands, there are different people now in different situations, circumstances. And that to me is the part of the allure of what we're looking forward to when it comes to this upcoming season. And I'm all for it. So,
yes, sir.
All right, man. Great show. As always, man. Good stuff. I appreciate you, not putting me in the red with my buy or sell. And for anyone who knows who the money man is between the both of us, you're looking at that dude right there. That's why he is the Warren Shaw.
I'm gonna get out of here anyway. But shout out to guys we didn't get a chance to touch on. Anthony Simons, D'Angelo Russell, Duncan Robinson. Obviously, KD is going to be covered exhaustively, so we know that. Jordan Poole, Sadiq Bey, Dylan Brooks, and Jalen Green, Yusuf Nurkic as well too. Brook Lopez. We already talked about Bradley Beal from the Clippers side. So some other guys too. That should be intriguing watches for how they land in some new places. But these were our top six, our sinister six, so to speak. And we'd love to hear who some of your picks are here for this upcoming NBA season.
Absolutely, man. Once again, we'd like to thank you and yours for hopping on board with us this week for the Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining us. You know where to find us, man. We got another one locked up, ready, loaded to go. So we'll catch up with you next time.